Person-centered care to me looks like putting the person at the center of all decision making. It's about mutuality. So that idea that I don't sit above people. I do not make decisions about other people's lives. People make the decisions about their own lives. And it's my role to respond to the person in front of me and the decisions that they want to make. It's about putting them, and also their families and carers and the people who are really important in their life, whether it's someone's parents or a sibling or a partner or friends, or if someone's at school or a workplace. It's about understanding the context of the person's life and what matters to them, and then working in a way that allows those connections to really shine. People recover much better when they're at home. Hospital settings are not actually where people recover. In psychiatric services, sometimes it's important for people to be there because they might, for example, want a new medication. They might need some support around safety, or home might not be an okay place for them and they want to or need to be in hospital. However, that might be somewhere where people can get like a little glimpse of some stability and some care, but that's not where people live. We don't live in hospital, we live in our homes, we live in community. And so that community setting is where recovery really happens. We can do a little bit to support when people are in hospital, but it's everything else. It's all of the other hours that people in their lives spend at their homes, in their communities, and with their connections there. That's how we form identity, not so much from just being in like acute care or hospital settings. I think what really helps people in their recovery journey at Life Without Barriers is that we have a wonderfully diverse workforce where we have a really solid lived experience workforce. So what that means is we have peer workers who have a lived experience of similar struggles to the struggles of people who may be accessing services from us, who use that experience very carefully and mindfully to support people in their recovery and to hold hope. I think that's something that's pretty special, and particularly when we have that alongside people of all different disciplines and backgrounds. So we have a really culturally diverse workforce as well. We have people from city areas and rural areas, and people who work outreach in people's homes and community. And all of those things come together to really support people in their recovery, which really happens in people's lives. It doesn't happen in like a sterile meeting room with a therapist sitting here like this and saying, oh yes, now tell me, how do you feel about that? We often ask how people feel, that's important, but it actually happens in people's lives. So I think that we connect with community and we connect with people where they are, and we come from quite often very similar places, I think is really important to supporting recovery. I was in a session with a couple of people in a family, and I was talking about something, and the person I was working with told me to shut up, I don't want to talk about that, can we talk about something else? And people might think that that's like not a great thing, but I was so excited. I was so happy, because one of the things that's really important is helping people to be able to have a voice, to speak up, to say if they want something different. And many people that we support in mental health have had lots of experiences where they haven't felt safe to be able to speak up. And for me and for that person, that felt like a huge breakthrough, that they could say, no, I want you to change direction. I want you to do something else. It was just absolute gold, and it was also really funny. They were advocating for themselves beautifully. The biggest challenges that people face when accessing mental health services actually aren't about mental health services at all a lot of the time. It can be things like poverty, housing insecurity, all the different facets of our society that combine to increase people's distress. Within mental health, one of the challenges is that we work in systems that can be a bit under-resourced, so people don't always get the care and support that they need. They don't always get the right support either, and that can be really tricky. Some people, particularly people who've experienced being in mental health care for a long period of time, have had lots of difficult life experiences, and it's really important to be trauma informed and sensitive to people's experiences and understand that people come with a whole lot of often really difficult things that have happened as well. I think that what I would change is a little bit of the hierarchy in services. So the way things tend to be in Australia and in lots of other countries as well is that there's a hierarchy where the person at the tippy top of the hierarchy is, like a big boss who has like a clinical background or is an executive, and that's a really important role. We need that. But in terms of the value and where we should be putting our attention, it's actually a little bit flipped around, because where we need to be putting in the most care, support and attention are people with lived and living experience. So we do need both, but I think it would be about shifting the scale a little bit. So back to that idea of being really person-centered. The other thing for me would be around changing the resourcing available. In Australia, mental health care statistically is about 20% of the health burden in Australia, and it gets around 7% or so of the health funding. If we approached mental health care in the same way that we approached other forms of care, I think it would look a little bit different, and I think it could look a little bit better as well. The biggest myth that I would like to bust is that there's any such thing as someone being crazy. It doesn't exist. No matter what diagnosis someone might have, no matter what symptoms someone might experience, that if you don't understand the person might seem strange or odd or unusual. Once you understand the person's experience, where they're coming from, you understand where the person's coming from, and then you learn that actually we're all just human. There's no them or us, right? There's only us, and different people might have different things that happen for them and different ways that they cope with being in a world that can sometimes be pretty chaotic and scary. But that doesn't mean that people are worse or bad or wrong, even when they're experiencing symptoms that are really painful or confusing.